Amen. Thank you so much for that message. And so, as you know, we are building bricks of excellence. And we now have 2 wonderful bricks. But now it's time to add a 3rd layer. Are you guys ready for that? Yes. All right. I think it's really appropriate because we were just talking about voting. And it was mentioned the thing that we need to do most is vote, 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 right? And so now let's go and switch the whole topic into politics. I'm going to bring up a man right now, Daniel Lavelle. And Daniel has been, he was elected 2010? 2010, so he's been serving for quite a while. And some of his things that he really likes to accomplish is on social issues, dealing with the police force, and creating policies to make lives better for folks. So Daniel has been on the forefront. I'm especially proud of the fact that he get all of his training from Grace Memorial Presbyterian Church. You know, the family has a rich history in the church, and I think that is what's guided him and his principles, which has allowed him to become president of the city council. And so we are honored today to have the president of the city council come and address us and talk about politics. And of course, you can ask some questions to him as well. So without further ado, Daniel Lavelle.
Excuse me, it's tall up here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So first and foremost, I have to start with an apology. I don't see him here, but Reverend Johnny Monroe.
He's on the screen. He's online.
Oh, he's on the line? Okay. So Reverend Monroe, I apologize. When he called my office a while back and asked would I participate in today, when my staff said that he had called and asked would I be a panelist, I said, of course, it's Reverend Monroe. Reverend Monroe calls, you say yes, and you figure the rest out. But unfortunately, as I was walking out of the office, I forgot to put it on my actual calendar. And so when he called me about 3 times this morning, and Miss Williams also called, I was actually at the YMCA helping my son practice basketball for his game this afternoon. So I apologize. I was supposed to be here about an hour and a half ago. So I apologize to you all as well. What I also know is I didn't have a formal presentation prepared. When Alex came over and said, you'll give your formal speech now, I said, oh, I gotta get a formal speech. And so what I will do, based on the conversation that I heard as I walked in, and Mr. Witherspoon, who I know very well, was speaking, and then based on the question and answer period, I will try to address why I believe politics is critically important, and then speak to at least one of the comments that I heard. What I have learned is that politics affects your everyday life, whether you like it or not. But what I've also learned is, to the point of voting, the majority of us do not vote because it's not been made personal to them. They don't understand it on a personal level. And I've learned this really through the eyes of children. Every so often, I'm called to a high school or somewhere like that to talk to children about the importance of registering to vote, the importance of voting. And the first 1 or 2 times, I think my message fell on deaf ears. They didn't know who I was. They didn't care. They had other things to do. The last time I went and spoke to those children, there was a kid that was in the back of the auditorium paying no attention to me whatever. He had his headphones on, as most kids do these days. My children walk around with headphones. It drives me crazy. But so eventually, I waved and yelled at the young man, asked him to take his headphones off, which he obliged, and he did. And I said, do you know who the president is? And this was back when Obama was still the president. And he jumped up, of course, Obama. Cool. Do you know who your congressperson is? No. Do you know who your state senator is? No. Do you know who the mayor is? And he said, some guy named Bill. At the time, it was Bill Peduto. I said, do you know who your council person is? He said, no. I said, I'm your city council person. And so I introduced myself to him. And I said, of all the people you know, in many respects, I can have a greater impact on your life than all of them combined. Yes. And he looked at me and said, that's impossible. You're not more important than the president. I didn't say I was more important than the president. I said, I can have a greater impact on your life. And he said, well, how's that possible? And so I said, well, tell me one thing you like to do. He said, I like to play basketball. I said, cool. I'm gonna make a new law that says no young black boy, 18 and under, is allowed to play basketball. He said, you can't do that. I said, I can if I can get 4 of my colleagues to vote with me. I can absolutely do that. He said, no, that's impossible. I said, well, tell me something else you like to do. He's like, I like to listen to music. I said, cool. I'm gonna make it so no young man or girl is allowed to walk through downtown, because I was at Kappa, is allowed to walk through downtown with headphones on. No more listening to music. He said, you can't do that. I said, yes, I can, assuming I get 4 other people to vote with me on council, because there's 9 of us, and I explained that whole process to him. So we went through this scenario, and another kid jumped up and said something he likes to do, said, could I ban that too? I said, yeah, I could. And so finally, some kid said, well, do you do anything good? And I said, I think I have. And that led into a different conversation. And it led into that was recently, we had just, in the city of Pittsburgh, I had sponsored a bill decriminalizing marijuana, small amounts of marijuana. And so I used that as an example. And then one kid could relate to it because he said, oh, my older brother had gotten in trouble because of marijuana. So I used that as one small example. We started talking about some other bills. By the end of the conversation, the children had a better understanding of the importance of politics, especially local politics, and how that can have a grave impact on their life. I use that as an example because of the conversation that I overheard you all having with Mr. Witherspoon. She knows I love her dearly. No, yes, I do. You know I do. But her statement was that politicians, she brought the concern about banking and lending. And she's actually not wrong. But it doesn't mean that politicians don't care about such issues. Roberta, Stanley Lowe, many others in the Manchester neighborhood have brought this issue forward. The city of Pittsburgh is currently in the process of reviewing what banks we will put our money in. And it's because of the issue that they brought to me many, many years ago, which led to me writing the responsible banking bill, which is to say that every year we have a $700 million budget, well, capital operating budget, $500 million capital budget, and every year those dollars have to be deposited somewhere. And what we did was introduce a bill that said, if you cannot show to me how you're actually loaning to low to moderate income neighborhoods, how many black individuals have gotten mortgages, and the numbers are pitiful, to be quite frank. If you can't demonstrate how you've done these things to strengthen our neighborhood, why would I give you our money? On average, prior to that bill, we would have about 20 banks on average apply to be our depositories, to hold our money, because obviously those banks didn't lend that money, they make money off our money. After we passed that bill, we had 7, because they cannot meet the standards or the rigor that was required within that bill. That bill is still on the books and requires the city of Pittsburgh to every couple years have to review our lending and who serves as depositories. We're currently in the process of that right now. And I don't want to get too in trouble, but there's a major bank in the city of Pittsburgh that we're contemplating pulling our money from because of their lack of lending thereof within our community. But what I will also say is politics is about advocacy, and it's also a two-way street. If you don't call me, if you don't knock on my door, if you don't come to City Hall, as there's been some in this room who have done, and you don't demand more of me, that's both my fault and it's also your fault, because you have not working to hold the person you put in office accountable. This is a two-way street. Often I get the call when the house is about to fall down. And it'd be nice if you called me when the roof started first leaking, and then maybe I could have got involved and got engaged. Don't wait. Call on your elected officials, call on me, hold us all equally accountable. but you have to be equally engaged. Yes, you got to vote. Yes, you have to march. But yes, you also have to do the day-to-day, week-to-week activities of politics. And that's a relationship, it's a conversation, and it's an ongoing process that can either negatively or positively impact your life. So those are my remarks. With that, I will want to open up to questions. Ms. Williams?
I do have a question. We were considering the possibility of having a historical marker for Henry Highland Garnet.
Absolutely.
For the fact that he did Avery College on the north side. And so can we talk to you about having that and making that come to fruition?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's.
Better stay on them.
No, look. No, she's not wrong. She is not wrong. I'm sorry, what am I supposed to do?
No, you're fine.
Oh. I have a running list of probably 1,000 things to do on a daily basis. I say that's an easy ask. It is, but she is not wrong. If you don't call me and remind me that I'm supposed to do that, I will forget. And it's absolutely well-deserved, but she's not wrong. You do have to stay on me, on all elected officials. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Jerry Cannon from Charlotte. We'll be speaking a bit later. I want to thank you for the advocacy of economics and deposits and banks. I've spoken to all of the politicians who come to Charlotte when I was in pastorate. Reverend, can I come speak at your church? My first question was, do you have some green money in a black bank? And those who didn't know what the black, we got one in Charlotte, they didn't know what it was. I said, no, you can't come to the church, because you can't represent black folk without having an economic in the black community. My first church was in Atlanta, and the check from the church, Radcliffe, was written from Citizen Trust Bank. The second church was in Washington, D.C. That check was written from Industrial Bank of Washington. And I say that because black churches need to have green money in the black banks. I don't know what you have in Pittsburgh, but Charlotte Presbytery invested $170,000 in the black bank. So I'm speaking to the Presbytery. One of our tall steeples put $100,000 in the bank. Our church put $10,000. And I would say to our mayor, who was black, chief of police, who was black, sheriff, who was black, the chief of the fire department, who was black, as well as the district attorney. All of those came to the church. And I would say, do you have green money from your own accounts in the black bank? And they looked at me like, well, we can't do that, Jerry. I said, it's no accident that the North Carolina revenue is deposited at that time in First Union. It's now Wells Fargo. Because as you're saying, when you got to have some money, it got to be in a bank somewhere. And so I would just applaud you, and I ask all of those here, particular pastors of your churches, put some green money in the black bank. And you can have it at Truist, you can have it at B of A, or I guess here at PNC or Bank of New York. The point is, you can have your account someplace else. But if you're going to serve black folk in a black community, you need to have some green money in the black bank. Thank you very much.
So I see two hands, but real quick, just to respond. Currently, the city of Pittsburgh does not have any money in a black bank. What I would also say, what we're trying to figure out to do, what I'm trying to figure out, I'll speak for myself, is we are trying to figure out how can we get more of our dollars into the Hill District Federal Credit Union and other credit unions of that nature, because we openly acknowledge that those are the ones on the front line really making those loans, really doing the great work in our community. Unfortunately, what I have to figure out how to do is reform our regulations at the city. The requirements for you to hold our money are so gratuitous and complicated that even for Richard to respond to an RFP from the city to hold our money is going to be more cumbersome than it's worth. So we're trying to break that down so that we can get money into credit unions and into black banks, but currently we do not. So I just wanted to at least respond to that. And then what I'll also say, because he's speaking about the black church, is to me, the black church and politics, historically, and probably even more so now, have to be tied together. I know there's a separation of church and state, but when I think about my personal trajectory, and it's not necessarily politics, but it's organizing, it's teaching that the least of these matter. It's all of that work that then leads into politics and should bleed into politics. And I don't believe we should, as a church, run away from that conversation. Even when I can remember when I went to the Million Man March, I think I was a freshman in college. I went to the march, and Reverend Monroe immediately called me and said, now you got to come back to the church because we need to have a conversation about what you learned, why you were there, and what you're going to take away from that. And put me up in front of Grace Church to have that conversation. But that's the point where I'm saying it's inextricably linked. And even as I look at Reverend Peters off to the side, I believe he believes that, and he's also always been there, been an advocate. So I just wanted to say that on the record. I saw Robert and then this gentleman.
So, you don't have to tremble. I'm gonna be so nice.
No.
The councilman mentioned something about calling him, and you do want to build a relationship. Because even though, a lot of times I'm calling him complaining, but this is after I campaigned for him. And I'm calling to complain. I will say we do have a relationship because this past April, I want to say when we had that mini hurricane, and my power was out for weeks. A tree came down in my yard and struck my power, so when a lot of the other residents in Manchester had power, I still did not. And I will say the councilman called me, even though I've been rough on him. Hey, Roberta, you got your power on yet? What can I do to help? You know, so building those relationships were very important because he wasn't able to help me too much, but he did try. And we really did try. Something had gotten hit, so it just couldn't help. And then sometimes you might get on a charter boat in Maryland with your daughters to go fishing, and you might run into Daniel Lavelle on that same boat. Is that right, Councilman?
That is very true. That is very true. What I will also say to her point that I couldn't help but so much is one of the most important lessons I've learned in politics is I make no promises. And I learned that the hard way. When I ran for office in the Hill District, the number one issue was a grocery store. And I said, I promised to deliver a grocery store. And every year, I would go to senior building after senior building, community meeting after community meeting, and they would remind me if I had not kept my promise. It took 4 years to get a grocery store open. And that was the shop and save, and unfortunately it didn't last. But that's the first and last promise I've ever made. I will tell you I will try to do the best of my abilities, and it's your job to hold me accountable, but I've learned in politics never make a promise. Sir?
Regarding the point on keeping money in black or black-owned banks, I don't think I know, and I bet not a whole lot of people know, who are those banks? I mean, no, I know of one, but you have a list of 7, I believe, that you recommend for the city. I don't know who those are. Would it be, why wouldn't it be possible for you to publicize that list and send it around to people who are interested in finding out? And not just local banks either. I'm thinking of, maybe for the Presbytery to take on a challenge of finding out who national banks are that receive our investments and that kind of thing. Yeah. So how to find out who those?
something I've also learned in politics is a lot of elected officials like to say they know everything when that's not what we actually are. We're legislators. And so I like to defer to the professionals in the room. So there aren't many to my knowledge, actually. I do in my office, and I can certainly get the Presbyterian of that list, but I would lean on Mr. Witherspoon and others who are in that space, who could better do that. And to your point of using national banks, we do that. So Key Bank, F&B, PNC, First General, we do put our money into national banks, not just local banks. That would really just be PNC. But I can work to get you that information so that the Presbyterian can distribute it. Alex?
I think he misunderstood you. You said there were 7 banks. They weren't black banks.
Oh, sorry.
No, preferred that the banks adhere to certain policies so that they're the preferred banks for the city's money.
Yes, so that will all be public information. So the way that works is there's a committee that I sit on where we review the information that the banks send to the city. They have this, part of it is all their lending data, how many mortgages, what census districts, how many small business loans, like all that sort of information. And then they also have to submit a plan of how they're going to utilize the money and how they're going to do this work. We review all that information, score them accordingly, and then the committee makes a recommendation to our city controller, and then the controller provides a recommendation to council, and then council has to formally vote on who those depositories are actually going to be. So all that information becomes public in terms of who's actually going to be holding our money. We're not far enough in the process where I can make that public right now, but all that information will become public, and I can certainly make sure that everyone is aware when that takes place. So I saw Alex, and then.
So I'm gonna take a little different spin. We've talked about accountability that we want to hold to him. But let me also say that in order to empower Mr. Lavelle, the Honorable Lavelle, that we have to do our part. We have to get out and vote in numbers. Because when he goes back to his other 8 members to start arguing an issue, and out of the whole city, let's say the city has, I'm just using this number, let's say 10,000 voters, and he only has 100 voters in his district. He doesn't make that much noise. You know, there's nothing he can really say, like, look, I'm gonna get my 100 people to vote against you. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna fly. Right. We have to get out and support him in numbers, and vote, and vote, and vote. And then also, as we talk about economics, it's about dollars. When he's running for office, let's support him with a financial contribution. Because you want access, that's how you get access. You get access by making sure that you help him in office by giving to his campaign, working on his campaign, doing the things that is needed to make sure that he has a support system so that when he's arguing our issues, that people say, man, you better vote his way because look at all these people who are going to come against us. And so that really makes a difference. And I learned that lesson a long time ago when a politician, he said to me, when someone calls his office, he opens up that roll, that registration booklet, and if your name is not on that list, he closes it because you can't hurt him. You cannot hurt him. So we've got to come out in numbers and vote, support him so that other people know that we got his back.
One more question or comment? Any more?
I do want to say, and that is educating, because I do agree, we have to get out, we got to vote, but we have to teach each other how to vote. Like, one of the things, our church is a small church, but I hold the church, again, responsible and accountable, and as Dr. Monroe spoke all the time, we were supposed to separate politics from the government. How do you separate anything from anything? Because everything is under the realm of God. So you can't separate it. So we have to do that. With as you were, that was taught from my parents and wanna support, like I call my kids and say, okay, I don't do the computer thing, but I say, you all get on a computer, whatever y'all want to get on, let them know. We got to network with one another, and we have to teach each other how to do that. Because a lot of times in the black community felt neglected, and even when they did vote, they were still neglected. So we have to re-educate and reconfirm that we do have a voice, and that our voice does count. So it's an education thing that we all have to do. We're all responsible for doing it.
Agree? Yes, ma'am.
Make a comment. I came to town, I think in 2019, I'm not sure. I had got a letter in the mail, saying that they were gonna take over my property by, a woman that lived on Hawkins Street or something off of Marshall Avenue. There was like 20 other properties listed besides my own. And so I came to town with this letter, and all the information that was in there, trying to find your office. And so, as I'm running around, I came also to pay my taxes. So, as I came out of there, I ran into you and a couple other gentlemen coming in from your lunch. And so I showed you the papers, talked with you, another gentleman that was with you, and then I ended up at Manchester Citizens Council, and the other gentleman that was with you contacted me, got me with MCC. They helped me, and obviously all these other people that were listed on here. I'm assuming we all got letters from whoever these people were. I still have this stuff. I just come across it looking for some other stuff. And so to say that they helped me with that, I haven't had a problem until 2023. And I come home, and I think I had worked the polls or something that weekend. And that week, come home, my screens are all cut out of the back of my house. I had tires in my yard that they stacked at my fence, and broke my fence down by climbing in. So it's like an ongoing thing, like trying to run me out of my house since they started this Esplanade thing down in Manchester.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been something else. I leave my house, I come home, I sew for other people. I have done anything with sequins in years. And I'll come home, there'll be sequins sprinkled throughout my house. Came home one other time, opened my drawer, and you could see a white cloud of dust going all the way back to my kitchen. And I'm like, really? What could that be about? I had emptied my charcoal grill, say maybe a week or two before then, and this looked like all the dust from the charcoal grill going through my house. And that was probably about 2023. So all this started to build from then, and it's still going on. Yeah, so I have anointed every door, every window, all that. I've done everything that the book tells you, the Bible tells you to do. I've done. But I pray all the time, and whatever it is, and whoever you are, God got all this, But it's just been crazy.
I don't want to discuss it from here, but if you make sure I have your name and information before I leave, I'll call you. You can follow up.
Yeah, and I remember her sharing those things with me. They really did happen. But she lives right near where this riverfront, Esplanade, and Ferrisville that we don't need.
They hacked my cameras, they hacked my Wi-Fi. My camera wouldn't work for like 12 hours or something like that, and then like 5 a.m. suddenly start working. So it stayed black for almost 12 hours. This guy and his dog had passed my house. They would pass my house and point cameras to my house. There's a group of older white gentlemen that would pass my house earlier in the day and sometimes in the evening. They would pass my house. There's always somebody pointing their phones towards my camera, my doorbell So it would either static, even the mailman, when they come and put the mail in the box, the cameras were static and like blur them out. So I'm like, really? The difference is you still on the camera. Now the cameras don't work or none of that works. And so they just hacked the Wi-Fi. So it's just been crazy. I'm like, okay, I ain't going nowhere. Go get all this. You know, you ain't coming to me with offering me chump change. Chump change don't get me to a better house. Don't get me nowhere. But I'm gonna be right here.
Okay, I'll follow up with you.
Well, make sure, like, I'm about to say Reverend Lavelle. Make sure Daniel Lavelle is at Councilman Lavelle. You give him your information and follow up. And then if there's anybody in this room who would like to walk through to make, help her keep him accountable or whatever the case, this is where the community comes in. Because not only having these problems, but having a safe space to talk about the problems, but also supporting each other and talking to the right people and to do something about the problem. So that's what we have to do beyond just, we have to talk to the right people and then support each other. So during our networking time, during lunch, you guys, if there's anybody that would like to talk to this young lady and, just partner up and come up with some plans. We already have one solution. Councilman Lavelle said, give me your information. She's also gonna have to call him and stay on him as well. He admitted it, but it's our job. That's part of it as well. So, Reverend Lavelle. I might be speaking the future. Who knows? But thank you.
Thank you.
So anything else you would like to say?
I'm here to serve.
Yes,
Call on me.
got it. Thank you so much.